Hello and welcome to another episode of Osgoode Community Chronicles, where we explore the rich history, vibrant events, and remarkable stories that make up the Osgoode ward and surrounding communities. In each episode, we dive deep into our local heritage, drawing from the meticulous records and research of our local historians and families. These invaluable resources allow us to bring you stories from the past, ensuring that the traditions that shaped our community are shared with future generations. Whether you're a lifelong resident like me, or a newcomer, join us as we tie our fascinating history to the present-day version of our beloved region of Osgoode and surrounding communities. I'm your host, Tracy Daviero. I do hope you're staying warm in this deep freeze we seem to have been experiencing. Finally, we got a little bit of snow last night that will hopefully get the snowmobiles out on the trails. I think it's been a very quiet winter, at least it has so far around our house. I saw the coolest thing last week on Daley Road. If you follow me on Facebook, you would have seen the photos and maybe the little video. I was driving to pick up a book from someone from the Buy Nothing site, and I was going east on Daley around 5 p.m. I think. On the south side of the road, there are a few houses along that way and the mushroom farm. In the field just before the farm, on this side of it in Osgoode, I saw what I thought was a huge pack of wild turkeys fairly far back in the field. No surprise, really. We have lots of wild turkeys around our place, and I've counted more than 40 in a single field on Cabin Road before. But I realized a moment later that they were not, in fact, turkeys, but they were deer. So many deer. I pulled the car over so that I could count them because I had never seen that many before, and I wanted to take a few pictures to bring home to show Tony. I counted 30 in one field, and I know I missed a bunch further back of them. There were more than 30, but I did count 30. In the field on the other side of the farm, there were 9 more. 39 deer is definitely the most I have ever seen at once. We were driving to my cousin's cottage near Mont Saint Marie a couple of weekends ago, and we saw several packs of a dozen at a time, which was pretty shocking then. I don't know. I don't see deer very much. I guess maybe some people do, but we sure don't around here. Not 39 at once in Quebec either. So it was quite a sight to see. It was really neat. And apparently they move into the field when the swamp freezes over. So now you know. They sure hid well during hunting season, didn't they? In today's episode, we will have our news and events calendar as usual. Our business segment today is about the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority, the RVCA. Our historical segment introduces us to the Loney family, the third official family to settle in the Osgoode area in the 1800s. Our community voices is a Daley's diary from Mike Daley's words in the Historical Society newsletter. And we'll finish up with another feel-good mental health moment from the files of my grandmother, Mary Blanchfield. Let's get into it. Every week on the podcast, we'll share some of the local events that are taking place in the area. So many people doing great things. Please do be sure that you get out to support them. A bit of news first. The Rideau Valley Conservation Authority is hiring post-secondary students for a wide range of jobs, including field experience. Share with young people that you know. Seniors Community Services in Kemptville is looking for volunteers for their Friendly Visits program and other volunteer opportunities. Contact Jill Woodley for more information. Your kindness can be the difference between isolation and connection. Time can bring warmth, laughter, and joy. I love that. There are a number of community safety town hall meetings coming up in conjunction with the local community associations and the Ottawa Police. The first one is being hosted by Manotick Community Association on Tuesday, February 4th at Manotick United Church at 2 p.m. And they'll be having another session at 6:30 p.m. that same day, Tuesday, February 4th. Topics covered are going to include scam prevention, auto theft protection, home and personal safety, and neighborhood watch. Sad to think we need an event like that, but it's very awesome that it is happening. Here are our events for this week. January 30th, Oh Yeah is hosting a focus group on mental health and social media use. It starts at 5:30 as part of the Teen Drop-In. It is geared towards youth in grades 7 to 12, and they'll have free pizza. January 30th is the Greeley Winter Carnival. January 30th to February 2nd, as a matter of fact, and they have a full calendar of activities. A charity bingo, kids glow dance, firefighters pancake breakfast, magic show, outdoor activities, sleigh rides, absolute comedy show for the adults, Greeley Lions brunch, and more. On February 1st, tickets go on sale for the Greeley Players presentation of Grease, coming up on March 19th to 23rd at the Greeley Community Center. Also on February 1st, Kemptville Snowmobile Club's 50th anniversary Snoworama dinner is at the clubhouse. It's $30 per person. And again on February 1st, the Kemptville Carnival takes place at Curry Park and Ferguson Forest Center, the two locations. There is skating, performances, beaver tails, free hot chocolate, fun family activities in the family fun zone, horse-drawn carriage rides, and more. It is free admission. And February 3rd and 5th, Oh Yeah is hosting two more focus groups. These ones are for grades 2 to 6. They identified a major gap in programming for this age group in the village, and they want to hear from parents about the services that you would like to see. Please RSVP to Carly at Oh Yeah to join those sessions. Another winter carnival is in Manotick. February 6th to 8th, Manotick Shiverfest takes place over those 3 days. Activities there include a pancake breakfast, chili cook-off, a bingo. There's an open mic on Thursday night at the Mill Tavern, a music concert at Manotick United Church on Friday, snowshoe races, scavenger hunt, outdoor bonfire, and neon dance, Osgoode Rideau Timbits hockey, magic show, Rideau Skating Club exhibition, curling, horse-drawn sleigh rides, and a whole lot more. On February 7th, MACA, Manotick and Area Center for the Arts and Wellness, focuses on intergenerational connections for seniors through arts and wellness. On the 7th, they're hosting a Friends and Neighbors dance party featuring the Retrosonics at Manotick United Church. Doors there open at 7 p.m. and the tickets are $10 per person. The Seniors Community Services is starting a therapeutic art group for seniors on Friday afternoons. February 7th is the first session, and the group runs for 8 weeks until March 14th. The cost is $35 to cover materials. February 8th, Ross is having a community consultation in Greeley, again for seniors. If you're a senior living in Greeley or someone providing care or sharing a home with a senior parent, they want to hear from you. Starting at 10 a.m. in the community center, they will share all about Ross's services available to seniors living in the Greeley area and take feedback on their programming. It's free and light snacks will also be served. The Vernon Winter Carnival is taking place February 8th and 9th, and they will have crafts, snow, painting, cub car races, brunch, a church service, and more crafts on day 2. Big full calendar there as well. On February 8th, the Rideau Snowmobile Club is hosting their poker rally starting at the North Gore RA. The cost is $25 per rider, and cash prizes will be awarded for best poker hands. First prize wins $500. And the Kenmore Winter Carnival is on February 9th and 10th. It starts on Friday night with a Youth Valentine's dance at the community hall, ice sculpture and snow creation contest. And then on Saturday, they're having a pancake breakfast, coloring contest, outdoor family activities, including a family skate, tobogganing, touch a truck event, a chili cook-off lunch with proceeds for that going to the Life's a Trip Foundation, and a shinny hockey game at the park. Lots and lots of things to do, particularly in the outdoors. So let's get out there and enjoy it. That is our news and events for this week. In this week's Business Spotlight, we're talking about the Rideau Valley Conservation Authority, or the RVCA. The Rideau Valley Conservation Authority has a rich history tied to the conservation and management of the Rideau Valley watershed in Ontario. It was formed in 1966 under Ontario's Conservation Authorities Act, which allowed municipalities and the province to form conservation authorities to manage natural resources to address things like flooding, erosion, and other environmental concerns. The organization focuses on the Rideau River watershed, which spans over 4,000 square kilometers, parts of the city of Ottawa, including, of course, Osgoode, Rideau, Lees and Grenville, Lanark, and Frontenac. In its early years, the RVCA prioritized flood control to mitigate risks for communities along the Rideau River, water quality improvement to address pollution concerns from agricultural and industrial sources, land management through reforestation and soil erosion control projects, and public awareness and education about conservation practices. In the 70s and 80s, the RVCA implemented floodplain maps to reduce flood risks in certain areas, as well as inform development decisions. They also launched reforestation projects, planting thousands of trees to restore natural habitats. Monitoring programs for water quality and aquatic ecosystems were also established in the 70s and 80s. The 90s brought expansion of education, including conservation outreach in schools, stewardship programs for private landowners in sustainable land and water use. Currently, the RVCA is focused on climate change adaptation strategies that monitor habitat protection and flood resilience. The RVCA collaborates with municipalities and community groups to balance development in the urban areas with environmental conservation. Watershed management includes things like flood forecasting, stormwater management, and natural hazard planning. Water quality monitoring includes regular assessments of rivers, streams, and lakes. The RVCA conducts regular water quality assessments in the Rideau Valley watershed, which includes Osgoode Township. These assessments help identify trends and inform conservation strategies. Residents can access historical water quality for local lakes, rivers, and streams through the RVCA's resources. Reforestation efforts support private landowners through subsidized planting programs. In October 2024, the RVCA expanded its land conservation program to include the Rideau, Mississippi watershed. This initiative assists farmers and landowners in implementing ecosystem projects such as reforestation, windbreaks, riparian buffers, wetland restoration, grassland and pollinator habitats, and clean water projects. This program covers 8,500 square kilometers encompassing 31 municipalities, including areas within Osgoode Township. The RVCA also owns and manages conservation areas such as Foley Mountain, Baxter, and Perth Wildlife Reserve, which provide recreational and educational opportunities. The RVCA plays a critical role in preserving the natural heritage of the Rideau Valley region, which includes the Rideau Canal. Through partnerships with local governments, businesses, and residents, the RVCA continues to protect water resources, promote sustainable development, and enhance biodiversity. The RVCA also consistently collaborates with other conservation authorities like the South Nation Conservation Authority. The Floodplain Mapping Partnership covered the areas of Grays Creek from Manotick Station Road to Snake Island Road. These areas were surveyed to identify areas that might be susceptible to flooding and erosion. The aim of the project is to support appropriate land use planning and safe building practices. And of course, as we mentioned at the top of the episode, RVCA is hiring for the summer. And that's our business spotlight for this week. In this week's historical segment, we are checking in on the Loney family. Remember I told you last week that the York and the MacDonnell families were the first settlers in the area, the first recorded settlers. The next ones in the history books are the Loneys, Samuel Loney to be specific. Samuel Loney's parents were John and Catherine Loney. They settled in Montreal after arriving from Europe in New York. There is a little confusion as to whether they came from Ireland or Scotland. We may know that answer by now, but in the Pioneer Families books that I was referencing, the author did not know at that time. John's wife, Catherine, here's a strange fact about her. She was kidnapped at age 3 by Indians, apparently, and remained with them until she got married at age 18. She never knew her original surname. John and Catherine had landed near Cornwall in 1784 with their children. One of their sons was William, and he married Eleanor Fitzpatrick, and they had 14 children. John, George, were both born in the Cornwall area, and after William and Eleanor moved to Osgoode, then the rest of the kids were born, 12 in total. William married Elizabeth McGee. Samuel married Mary Ann Farlinger, and we'll get into their family in just a few minutes. Mary Polly Ann married Richard Hall. We'll talk a little bit more about her as well. Peter married Sarah McGee. Anna Maria married William Albertson. Sarah Bruce Nelson married Emmeline Eliza Kreiderman. Richard married Diana McGee. James Julia Ann married George Sweeney. and another Samuel later on. So we'll go back to Samuel and Mary Ann. They were the third family listed as settlers in Osgoode Township. Now Samuel and his sister Polly, who married Polly Ann, she went by Polly, she came with her husband Richard Hall, and Samuel came with his wife Mary Ann Farlinger, and they came from the Cornwall area. They were the next settlers in the Osgoode Township area. The third family listed, they had 11 children, and they first built a log home on East Half Lot 18, Concession 9, which is sort of northeast of Metcalfe on York's Corners Road, and then built a large stone home on that land in 1850, which still stands today, with a massive stone wall that runs along the basement, and they both lived there until their death. So their children were Mary Ann, who married Henry Latimer. They had 12 children. We'll talk about the Latimers in a future podcast episode. Simon married Elizabeth Latimer, and he later on lived on East Half Lot 18, Concession 9. They did. William married Martha Jane Wallace. Elizabeth Ann, I believe, was unmarried. James married Elizabeth Waddell, and apparently he was killed by a falling tree, leaving his wife Elizabeth. She was pregnant at the time, so he left a small child and a pregnant widow. John Farlinger married Elizabeth Jane Quayle, and they had 6 children. They had Samuel James, who married Davina Stanley of Greeley, and they had 4 children. Mary Julia Essie married William Hall of Kenmore. Emma Rumina married George Robert Walsh Sparks of Vars. William Richard married Ruby Estella Dean, and they also lived in the stone house. Elizabeth Ina, I think, may have been unmarried, and Florence Martha May married William Rylance Orr. So those are all Samuel's children, Samuel and Mary Ann. That's their line down. Now the sister, Mary Polly Ann, married Richard Hall, and they lived on East Half Lot 20, Concession 9. And they arrived, like I said, with the Halls arrived with Samuel in Osgoode as the next settler. And they had 5 children. William Hall Sr. married Helen McIntyre, and they had 10 children. John Richard Hall married Mary Ann Wallace, and they had 3 children, and apparently he drowned. Charles Hall, I don't find any information yet on him. Elizabeth Hall, also perhaps unmarried. James Hall married Jane Anderson, the daughter of David and Martha Anderson. And so Polly and Richard also lived in the York's Corners type of area. And so those were the 2 families that came next. Now I want to just go down a little bit further in John Farlinger's family. Samuel James married Davina Stanley of Greeley, and they had 4 children, as I said. She was the daughter of William Stanley and Elizabeth Scott, and he was a township councillor and became the roads commissioner later on. And they had 4 children. And again, just to break down these families so that you can see who married into them and where they may still be in the area. Ina Larina married Arthur Brown of Stony Creek. John Allen married Edith Viola Billings, and they had no children. Samuel Borden married Helen Bickerton, and they had 4 kids. William Haig married Inez Alexander, and they had 3 kids. William Richard and Ruby Estella Dean, they lived in the stone home, and they had 7 children. And those 7 children are the ones that you may be familiar with. Dorothy Mabel married Lawrence Craig. She is the one who wrote the Pioneer Families excerpt, so she's the one who gave a little bit of the information about her grandmother who had been kidnapped by the Indians, other people who had, the other fellows who had drowned and that kind of thing. So she gave all of that information. It would be interesting to see if there's a little bit more information in the history books now than there was whenever she wrote that excerpt. Ruby Wilhelmina was a teacher in Toronto. John Edward. Florence May married Donald Hay. Hazel Dean married Edwin McCormick. And William Dean married Doris Karkner, daughter of Isabella and Stanley Karkner. Now, you probably heard me talking about Doris in our Karkner family episode, so that's where I wanted to get you to. And the last sibling there, William Dean's last sibling, is Kenneth Samuel Ernest. And so those are the Loneys of the area. Now, you've heard me mention the Loneys' big stone home several times. I've told you approximately where the property was on York's Corners Road. What you may have figured out by now is that the house The big stone house definitely still stands today, and you can see it anytime you drive down York's Corners Road, because it's now Stanley's old maple farm. We'll talk more about Stanley's in a future podcast episode, and we'll go further into the Loney family into the future too. I think we stopped still somewhere in the 1850s on this particular go, but that is our historical segment for this week. Today's Community Voices is a Daley's Diary, words from Mike Daley about the Loney family in a Historical Society newsletter from 1976. Since this newsletter is the final one for the year 1976, we are using the interesting picture of the Loney family for the last time. As we stated earlier, this family has a link with the American Revolution of 200 years ago, when John Loney and wife Mary and 3 sons and a daughter came to Canada, and after a few years in barracks at Montreal, settled in Charlottenburg Township along the St. Lawrence. The census of that township in 1861 indicated Loneys were living there at the time. A great many other names there are the same as many in our earliest Osgoode Township records. An entry in the Church of England register at Christchurch Cathedral reads, Mrs. Loney, midwife, died October 5th, 1813. This lady was probably the mother of all the Loneys in our district. Earlier this year, we promised to continue the letter written home to Breadalbane, Perthshire, by Donald McKercher, who had arrived in Osgoode Township the previous year, 1855. In a very pleasant visit to Scotland last July, the editor visited Strawnfernan on the edge of Drummond Hill, a mountain to us, about a mile from Kenmore. A view of Loch Tayside would convince anyone of the homesickness everyone must have felt who exchanged that scenery for the wilderness of mighty trees in our neighbourhood. At the Registry House in Edinburgh, the marriage is recorded for Kenmore Parish on December 30th, 1948. Donald McKercher of Kenmore Parish and Mary McClellan of Killin Parish. The letter to cousins Gilbert and Duncan McLaren continues. There is a great many from Loch Tayside around me, which they were very angry at me I did not bring out a bagpipe. They told me that they would rise £4 by subscription if I would get one out from the old country. If you would be so good to speak to my old companion, John Macpherson, and maybe he would have one to spare of his prize pips. But I would like a good black ebony and mounted with ivory. I think John Macpherson can get one made with McDougall Perth for £4. I shall get them out next summer with somebody. There is a great many come from Breadalbane this summer. If I would get a pipe, I would get great many of the Highlanders to chop and clear the land while I was down at the Indian land last winter, seeing my friends. They are not very well. They have very poor lands there. I got a cow from Donald McKercher, my cousin. I am 50 miles above them. The people in this country are far back in clothes. The first day I went to the church to hear most of the men had nothing on them but their trousers and shirt, and some of them barefooted and a straw hat about 6 pence worth. Men that has properties worth £500 going so raged, but I don't see them half so poor now because I'm accustomed to see them. The people when they are while in this country, they will lose their colour. They turn so dark the regular food people takes here is floor bread and pork and tea without sugar and potatoes. They have cooking stoves, which is very handy. There's 3 places for cooking and an oven to bake bread, all joined together, but they are dear, from £6 to £10. Where they are new, I bought a second-handed one at £5. It is very hard for a poor man to commence in this dear country, but if I will keep in good health, I should get over it. There is to be a large gathering of the Sons of Temperance, and if I had a pipe, I would get $10. That is £2 sterling. I am losing great many chances for not having a pipe. I think I could get one from Glasgow to Montreal with store goods. The merchants in Montreal gets goods from Glasgow. But if you would find out a good black ebony pipe and the price of it, I would get them cut some way. Provision is not so high this year. We shall get good green tea for the half a pound. That is 2 shillings sterling. The people in this country are terrible tea drinkers. Stuart, that I was with last year, spends about £60 of tea every year. There is no sugar used in the tea in this country. I saw more poor people here than ever I saw in Scotland, but not any of them from Breadalbane. 3 or 4 families stopping in one house, like the Tinklers in the kilns in the old country. The people in general looks very poor and thin with the heat in summer and cold in winter, and drinking strong tea without milk or sugar. There is a great heat in this country. Mary made a kind of garden, and she has about 4 bushels of watermelons and cucumbers. They're very fine to eat on a warm day. If you would be so good to send me a newspaper, and then I am fond of Scotland yet. D. McKercher. The ebony and ivory pipes came to Canada and have been donated to the museum by great-grandson Barry McKercher, also a piper. His ancestor had taken part in the splendid pageantry described by Queen Victoria herself, and in her visit to Taymouth Castle in 1842 had received a cup in appreciation of his part in the ceremony. The church referred to this as Old Free Church, Presbyterian, at Spring Hill. The people who are left in beautiful Breadalbane are anxious to contact descendants of emigrants. A group there are collecting and publishing emigrants' letters. The 1861 census gives the following information. William S. Loney of the township of Osgoode, farmer. William Loney, Osgoode, farmer. Samuel Loney, Osgoode, farmer. Annie Kincaid, Osgoode, wife of Robert Kincaid, farmer. Louisa Loney of the city of Waterbury, Connecticut, spinster, the only surviving children of Martha Loney, who died intestate in 1891. Documents such as this indicate how our early families have spread throughout the continent. There's much more detail for those who have a special interest in the document. Just a little more information about the people who settled in our community in the early 1800s. And that is our Community Voices segment for this week. In today's mental health moment, I'm going to share a feel-good clipping from my grandma Mary Blanchfield's stuff. She had kept some birthday cards, obituaries, a few letters, and a few other documents in a footstool that I inherited when she moved out of her senior's apartment here in Osgoode. And in it was this cute little story about motherhood that she had clipped together and saved. And it's called Just a Mom with a question mark. A woman renewing her driver's license at the county clerk's office was asked by the woman recorder to state her occupation. She hesitated, uncertain how to classify herself. What I mean is, explained the recorder, do you have a job, or are you just a... Of course I have a job, snapped the woman. I'm a mom. We don't list mom as an occupation. Housewife covers it, said the recorder emphatically. I forgot all about her story until one day I found myself in the same situation, this time at our own town hall. The clerk was obviously a career woman, poised, efficient, and possessed of a high-sounding title like official interrogator or town registrar. What is your occupation? She probed. What made me say it? I do not know. The words simply popped out. I am a research associate in the field of child development and human relations. The clerk paused, ballpoint pen frozen in midair, and looked up as though she had not heard right. I repeated the title slowly, emphasizing the most significant words. Then I stared with wonder as my pronouncement was written in bold black ink on the official questionnaire. Might I ask, said the clerk with new interest, just what you do in your field? Coolly, without any trace of fluster in my voice, I heard myself reply. I have a continuing program in research. What mother doesn't? In the laboratory and in the field. Normally, I would have said indoors and out. I'm working for my master's, the whole darn family, and already have 4 credits, all daughters. Of course, the job is one of the most demanding in the humanities. Any mother care to disagree? And I often work 14 hours a day. 24 is more like it. But the job is more challenging than most run-of-the-mill careers, and the rewards are more of a satisfaction rather than just money. There was an increasing note of respect in the clerk's voice as she completed the form, stood up, and personally ushered me to the door. As I drove into our driveway, buoyed by my glamorous new career, I was greeted by my lab assistants, ages 13, 7, and 3. Upstairs, I could hear our new experimental model, a 6-month-old baby, in the child development program, testing out a new vocal pattern. I felt I had scored a beat on bureaucracy. and I had gone on the official records as someone more distinguished and indispensable to mankind than just another mom. Motherhood, what a glorious career, especially when there's a title on the door. Does this make grandmothers senior research associates in the field of child development and human relations? And great-grandmothers executive senior research associates? I think so. I also think it makes aunts associate research assistants. Please send this to another mom, grandmother, aunt, or other friends you know. Isn't that so cute? Just a mom. Thank you to my grandmother, Mary Blanchfield, for saving that one for us so that I could share it with you today. And that is this week's mental health moment. Thank you for tuning in to this week's episode of Osgoode Community Chronicles. I hope you enjoyed our connections from the past and our taste of the present. Now you know a little more about some of the early day Loneys and the Halls in this area, and a little more about the original settlers in our area and just how long Stanley's Farm has been around. Remember, you can catch all of our past episodes on Spotify, Apple, Google, Amazon, or anywhere you listen to your favorite podcasts. You can also listen online at our website, osgoodecommunitychronicles.com, and follow us on social media on Facebook and Instagram. Don't miss next week's episode, where we'll share more news and events in your area and more stories of families past and present. If you haven't already, please be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on your player so we can be found by more people. We'd also love it if you leave us a review. It really helps others in the community find the show. And we are always happy to receive your comments on the stuff that we cover. Thanks again for supporting our snapshot of the local community. I'm Tracy Daviero, and this has been Osgoode Community Chronicles, keeping our rural spirit alive, one story at a time. I'll see you next week.